Okay, so yes, so this is our last class on Irigurae and in the semester. So I've switched it up. I don't know if I put it in on Blackboard. I think I mentioned it. So we're going to have just one test this weekend covering Kierkegaard, Buber, Irigaray, and you'll have one question each, which I think I put on Blackboard already, right? Who can confirm that I put the three questions? Okay, great. Okay, so you just do three questions, one for each. I'll say it now, just in case you want to jot it down, right? For Kierkegaard is how to overcome a relationship crisis, right? And for this, you need both of the lectures will help you. Buber, it's how to renew marriage. Again, both of the lectures. And then Irigaray, just based on today, ethics of sexuality, right? So that's that. The review for this test will be this Thursday, either at 7 or at 9 p.m. And anybody who feels they need it, go, right? If you're having trouble, if you've been having trouble with the test, if your grade has been 11 or below, I would suggest that you go to that review. It's open now, not just for SEEK students. So you have a choice between 7 p.m. on Thursday or 9 p.m. on Thursday in this classroom. And then the teaching assistant will be there and she will help you review for that. Any questions? And of course your essays do, right? You do an essay on any one of those three, right? You reflect either on Irigaray or Buber or Kierkegaard or all three, I don't care. But your essays also due this weekend. Any questions on the test and the essay that are due this weekend? Okay. Final project. You have to read my commentary on the Song of Songs, right? So you're already pros. Now, the reason why I'm having this class read this book is that I wrote this book based on this class. So all of the philosophers we've studied, I am using them in my commentary of the Song of Songs. So you will read, this is a great review. You're going to hear about Kierkegaard, Buber, you're going to read about Kant, and of course, you're going to be really delving into the Song of Songs. So this is a great book for you to read. So the final project is you read the book, and then you write me a review on Amazon. When you're done writing the review, you put a copy of it or you copy paste it or whatever you do in the Google Drive, right, in the section on final project so I can see what you wrote. It doesn't have to be a positive review, right? If you didn't like the book, you can write anything you want. It'll make it look more authentic. It's better, right? So be honest. I'm not going to penalize you for whatever you write. It's fine. Just write me a short review on Amazon and then hand it in also in the Google Drive. Any questions on the final project? Okay. You guys are so silent. Are you there? Okay. Then, what did I write here? Did I talk to you already about the classes I'm teaching in the summer, in the fall? Put your hand in the screen if I did. I didn't? Oh, okay, so let's do that. Yeah, I rarely see you. So, okay, so if you like this class, you're going to love one of the classes I'm teaching both in the summer and in the fall. This is 116, and I'm going to explain a little bit what it is. 116 is philosophy of religion. And I'm focusing there. So it's the same format as this class, 7 authors, same thing, reading assignments, same type of tests, same format. But in this class, we'll be focusing on the problem of evil. So this is a question that a lot of you stumble on, which is, if there is a God, why is there so much suffering, right? And in this class, we're going to look into different philosophers and the way that they answer that question, right? So it's going to be interesting. We'll be doing the Book of Job, Maimonides, Rumi again. We'll be doing Nietzsche, right? Gabriel Marcel, Emmanuel Levinas, and Simone Weil. So that's same kind of trajectory as in this class, but different authors. So that is taught, I'm teaching it in June. So you're welcome to sign up for that. It's going to be just 8 sessions in June. So it's not much of a time commitment. You'll just show up 8 times to class for about 2 hours. And then I'm teaching it also in the fall. Any questions on that class? Anything you want to know about it? Okay. I'm going to stay your silent selves today. Then in the fall, I'm teaching an upper level. Oh my God, what's the number? It's called Phenomenology and Existentialism. So look it up. I'm going to be focusing on the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas. And let me explain a little bit about this guy. So he's Holocaust survivor, right? I mean, he kind of lived during that time. And he's really focusing on the philosophy of the stranger, the importance of the stranger in our lives, the importance of the stranger in our communities, and why it is good for us to learn to engage with the stranger, with the people who we don't feel too comfortable with, why it's important for us, why it's the only way we grow when we are dealing with a stranger, or anybody who's giving us a hard time is a stranger, right? Anybody, whether it's a friend or a spouse, can be a stranger when they're giving us a hard time. So he kind of writes about how important it is to learn to welcome these difficult people in our lives. Why? Because it is the only way that we can grow to our true selfhood, right? So that's in essence kind of his philosophy. So if you're interested in going deeply into one philosopher, if you're interested in learning about phenomenology, which is one of the main schools of thought in the 20th century, you want to sign up for that class. It's upper level, it's a little harder, but I'm still going to be, explaining everything clearly, so you shouldn't be too lost. There's another great class I'll do in the spring, just so you know. It's called Plato and the Bible. And we'll be doing there what I call the Hebrew goddesses. These are the texts in the Hebrew Bible that are women-centered, strong female lead, and that are subversions of patriarchy. So we know that the Hebrew Bible is mostly a patriarchal text, but there are a number of texts in the Hebrew Bible that are actually going against the trend of patriarchy. These are texts with strong female leads. They're telling us a completely different way, right, of being human, of being in a relationship, of being spiritual. It's a very different approach to life, to spirituality. I call these the texts from the mother's house. So we'll be studying those. We'll be doing Song of Songs, Book of Ruth, Book of Esther, Ecclesiastes. And if you liked the Song of Songs, right, you will probably like that class in general. I'll be doing that one in the next spring. So I'm already telling you a little bit about it. Okay, any questions on anything I said so far? Good. I had a lot to say today. Yes, any woman interested in joining my feminine empowerment workshop that I will do all of next year for general public based on the Book of Song of Songs, Ruth, Esther. So this is looking at just what I told you right now. These are the Hebrew strong female leads. What can we learn from them as women? How can we grow as women? How can we walk in their footsteps? What can we learn about becoming empowered women from these very strong female leads? This is the story of Ruth, Esther, Song of Songs, and Eve, story of Eve. So if you're kind of interested in that, stay after class or send me an email telling me you're interested, and I'll put you on my list so that when I start these workshops, which will be more general public, not like a class setting, you can be a part of it. Okay, I got that. Okay, finally, all your late work, meaning all your late tests, your late essays, that's all you can hand in, or final project. Everything is due May 25 in the late papers folder. Okay, so you have a little bit of time until that. All right, done? We good? Great. All right, let's start the class for today. Today is going to be very interesting. All right, so today actually we are going to be talking about sex, finally, right? We can't have a class on love without addressing, right, sexuality. And today this is the text, right? We have a whole complete text focusing, right, on sexuality, lovemaking, good sex, bad sex, and so forth, right? So I'm so happy, right, to have one class on this because of the dire situation of sex education, right? I don't know if you remember your sex education classes. I do. They traumatized me. Here's what I got from it, right? Don't have sex, and if you do, all of these diseases will happen to you, including pregnancy, right? So this is kind of really, really twisted way of teaching sex education, right? I believe it's an approach based on fear. It's an approach which is just looking at the mechanics of it and focusing on protection, right? Nothing is spoken about how to make love, right? The art of lovemaking. Nothing is spoken about the emotional components of sexuality. Nothing is spoken about how to make a relationship last, right? Which was the goal of this class. So we really need to have one class at least going more deeply into the art of lovemaking. So really today we're going to be doing this, right? What we're going to learn right? And this is something that the ancients had understood, is that sex, of course, is something natural. It's, you know, something that we do more or less naturally, but it's an art also, right? Sexuality is also an art. And like every single art, you have to actually develop skill, right? How many of you were forced to play an instrument when you were a child? And put your hand in the screen. Okay, how many of you were dealing? Not many of you. By the way, a bunch of you are not on the screen. So please open your faces. Hossein, Ali, Feldman, Rivera, both Hosseins. Please open your faces. Thank you. Okay, great. So few of us, right?
Professor,
Yes, Rivera.
I'm actually in the hospital, so I don't want to keep my camera on.
Please take it off. You're gonna give us the virus. Are you okay, Rivera? Hopefully. All right, great. So, um, okay, so yeah, so we're looking at sexuality as an art, right? So if you learn to play an instrument, you know what I'm talking about. At the beginning, you play, it's not that great. Some of us are better than others, right? Some of us I play violin, so immediately I used to teach it. Some people have great sound right away, but they still have to learn, right? And some of us is horrible, right? So just like you have to learn how to play an instrument, and it takes several years before you can really get a nice sound out of your instrument, likewise with a partner, some of us are more talented than others, it's true, but all of us eventually have to learn our partner, right? Our partner is our instrument, and we have to learn them and learn what pleases them, what they want, and develop, right, the art of lovemaking with them. Your best teacher is your partner, right? So, and by the way, it doesn't matter. It helps to have experience, but ultimately your partner is going to be very unique. So you don't even need that much experience to be a good lover. You can actually learn everything with your partner, right? So let's talk a little bit about how Irigaray is going, what she's going to teach us today about the art of lovemaking. She's going to distinguish between three levels of lovemaking, right? Irigaray doesn't judge. She's not a moralist. She's not going to say, oh, this is immoral or this is sinful, right? She's going to say, no, no, no. All love is good, right? But there are different levels. There's beginner level, intermediate, advanced, right? So we're going to look at each one of those levels. And her encouragement, of course, she's not saying beginner level is bad. She's saying we all start there, right? But we need to move from level to level and become more and more sophisticated, right? And we can't, and she's encouraging us not to get stuck in a level. A lot of us get stuck, right? Okay, so let's look at, so I'm going to look at number one, beginner, beginner level. And we're gonna, she's gonna be commenting there when she talks about that on the French philosopher Sartre, which we'll talk about. Then we'll look at the intermediate level. And there she's gonna look at this very complicated name, right? This is another French philosopher, Merleau-Ponty. And then we'll look at the advanced level. And this is the French philosopher Lévinas. So she's gonna be, Lévinas. She's going to be really focusing on these three philosophers and criticizing them. Lévinas, she will simply develop what he started to say. She will agree with him, right? Okay, so let's go first and let's take out our book. We're going to look at beginner level sex. So what character, I'll explain it and then we'll read. Okay, what characterizes beginner level sex is that it is all about possession, right? The sex is about getting something from the other, right? It's not about the other. Sex can be about power, status, fulfilling sexual needs, right? This is where we all start, by the way. All of us, when we're teenagers, why do we want sex? Well, I want sex so I can have a boyfriend, right? I want sex so I can look good, or I want sex because I have certain needs, right? So a lot of us really start at that level. Get rid of the sun. That I can't see myself with all this stuff. Sorry, excuse me. Pull the curtain. Okay, better. Right. So a lot of us, right, we start at that level where sex is about possession. Now I lost my pen. Everything is against me today. Okay, right. So we start with the sex as an act of power. So just sex is about pleasing me or getting something for myself, right? It's not yet so much about the other person. So let's read a little bit how Sartre says this, right? And how she criticizes him. What's missing when we are still on that level of sex of being just about fulfilling something for myself. So go to page 18. Go to page 18 on the top. Everybody with me? Put your hand in the screen if you're with me. Okay. Good. So here she's talking about Sartre. I'll just say it in French, okay? Sartre. Repeat after me. No, just kidding. Okay, so you have Sartre or Sartre, right, in English, and he says this. So she's quoting. She's saying, if this is the case, how do I desire and enter into a relationship with him? Now she's quoting Sartre in his work Being and Nothingness. So she says this. In Being and Nothingness, Jean-Paul Sartre maintains that the only possible way to get laid, basically, is to enchant the other, right? So, and then she continues, next paragraph, thus I can possess the other, and according to Sartre, the fulfillment of desire does not exist without such a possession. So Sartre is kind of very down to earth. He says all sex is about possession. All sex is selfish, right? He's very, very cynical about human nature. He's saying all of us, even we say I love you and I'll marry you, deep down, sex is about possession, is about getting something, and that's who we really are, right? So a very cynical view of humanity, that ultimately sex is only about getting something from the other, and we just, we wrap it up into, we have some wrapping paper about how we love them and how we want to commit, but deep down it is just about commitment. I mean, just about getting something from them. Okay, so she's going to criticize that, and she's going to say this is so short-sighted, right? Sex is so much more, and he's not seeing that, right? So let's look at how she criticizes him. Go to the bottom of page 18, last paragraph. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay. Okay, so she says this. Here's what Sartre is missing, right? He's not seeing this potential of sex, right? So she says this, the other is and remains transcendent to me through a body, through intentions and words. You who are not and will never be me or mine are transcendent to me in body and in words, insofar as you are an incarnation that cannot be appropriated to me by me. Then she continues, the will to possess you corresponds to a solitary and solipsistic dream, which forgets that your consciousness and mine do not obey the same necessities. So she's saying, when sex is only about possession and getting what you need, you're maybe getting what you need, but you're missing completely the encounter you could have with another human being. There's no encounter. There's no genuine other, right? So she's saying you're missing, in a way, you're getting what you want, your needs are fulfilled, but you're completely missing the connection you could have had with another human being and the expansion of your life that can come with such a connection, right? So she's saying Sartre is very short-sighted. He's missing the whole opening up of my life that can happen when I really encounter another, and it's not just about my own needs, right? Buber would say Sartre is missing the thou. He just has the I, right? There's no thou-ness. Okay, in fact, if I were to use Buberian language to qualify this way, the beginner level is the I-it relationship, right? The other is just an it. And so Buber and Irigaray would say we get the it, we're getting satisfied, we're getting the power, the status, the needs, but we're missing the whole dimension of the thou, and this is impoverishing, right? So even though Irigaray says we all start there, right? She's encouraging us to move to a higher level, to a more advanced level. If we want to really experience the richness of life, we have to leave behind this kind of beginner level sexuality when it's just about me, right? You could compare this to fast food sex, right? McDonald's, right? I'm getting something, I'm getting my needs met, but I'm not really being nourished, just so you know, in case you didn't know. No nourishment in McDonald's, right? So she's encouraging us to move away from a fast food diet to something more, gourmet, right? Something more nourishing when it comes to sex. So, any questions on this first one before I get to the intermediate level? Okay. So probably most of you have graduated already from this beginner level. A lot of us are stuck in the intermediate. So let's talk about that. So I'll summarize and then we'll go into the quotes, which are a little complicated. So this is different. This is now you've experimented, you've had a few boyfriend, girlfriends, whatever. It hasn't worked out. You find yourself alone. And you're realizing how hard it is to actually find a partner, right? After you've been through a few, disastrous relationships, you start to feel so traumatized and wounded, right? That you start to, in a way, retreat into yourself, right? And at this point, you become the one taking care of your own sexual needs, right? You are, because there are no partners, or because you have developed some fear, right, of commitment because of past trauma, there is a retreat, right? And a lot of us go through a phase like this where we retreat and we take care of our own sexual needs, right? And we are not, in a way, engaging with another sexually, but we are still sexually active, so to say, right? We're still, finding our own pleasure, but we are not reaching out to another because it's so difficult, right? Because the world we live in is so hard to find a partner which, we can really have a loving relationship with. It's not easy, right? Or because we have been hurt before and now it's harder to go back into the world, so we retreat, right? And a lot of us go through a phase like this when we retreat into our own pleasure, right? Um, and where we take care of our own sexual needs by whatever way possible, right? So Irigaray, again, no moral judgment, right? This is intermediate. This is something that we go through, a lot of us, if not all. If you're lucky to get married at 19, that's great, right? But a lot of us will find ourselves in a situation where we have to take care of our own needs, right? And so she says, okay, that's fine, but here's what you're missing, right? Here's what you're not seeing when you get stuck on that level, right? And a lot of us do get stuck. We find it harder and harder to go out, date someone, actually be with a partner. It's easier to retreat in one's solitude and to fulfill our own needs, right? So she's saying what we're forgetting, and I'm going to read it in a second, is that sexual pleasure is ultimately a way to connect, right? Our sexual energy is ultimately a gift which we ought to bestow on another person, right? We tend to forget, I think, what a gift our sexual energy can be for another person, how powerful our sexual energy can be in renewing another person, right? And I think both women and men forget this, how powerful their love and their sexual energy, how deeply it can heal another human being when it is offered in love, right? And we tend to just keep that energy to ourselves, right? We because we have been hurt, we keep it to ourselves and we forget the healing powers that we have through sexual energy, right? I don't think we are aware of how powerfully healing loving sex can be, right? When you offer your body in love, right? When you offer your sexuality in love to another human being, this can be a powerfully healing experience for them. But because we've been hurt, we don't want to offer that anymore, right? And Irigaray is reminding us, right? Remember what your sexual energy is for. Remember what your sexual body is for. It is supposed to be a healing gift to another. It is supposed to be relational. It is supposed to be offered, right? And not kept by itself, right? So let's look at what she says here. So here now I'm on page 23. No, I'm going to start on page 21. This is where she's criticizing Merleau-Ponty. I'm skipping the quote by Merleau-Ponty because it's impossible to explain. He's writing very convoluted and I have to go over, I just summarized it for you. Actually, he mainly talks about how sexuality has become just a solitary activity and how we have become locked up in our own pleasure and have forgotten about the other. So here's how she responds. Go to page 21, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. But the subject-object dichotomy. Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay. So here she's criticizing Merleau-Ponty. She says this. I'm going to read a long sentence, then I'll get to the one I want. Subject-object dichotomy also depends upon the manner in which sexuality is conceived. Maurice Merleau-Ponty considers sexuality as ambiguity, etc. Okay, here's the sentence. As a result, sexuality does not favor the emergence of intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity, like intercontinental, between subjects, right? Inter means between, right? Let me write this down. So intersubjectivity means between subjects or between people. So what Irigaray is saying is that Merleau-Ponty has forgotten that sexual pleasure is something to be shared. It's something that's supposed to be offered. It's something that is supposed to occur between people and not by myself in the privacy of my own room right there. And we're forgetting how sexual pleasure is supposed to bring us beyond ourselves towards another, move us away from the prison of the self towards another. And instead, we are, in a way, many of us stuck in that intermediate level, right? Because of fear, right? Fear of loving again. And so she's inviting us, right, to get to the advanced level, which is what we're going to now. Any questions on the intermediate level? Okay, so advanced level. This is where she wants us to get. This is the ultimate gourmet sex, right? 5-star dining. Okay, so here she's basing herself on Levinas. And what Levinas is going to talk about in the quote we're going to study from Levinas is a concept called the caress. Right? So this is the caress is simply a way of touching, right? Which is a way of touching the other, right? Which for Irigaray is the highest form of sexuality, right? So caress is simply a way of touching, right? You know, when you caress, you're touching, right? So when Levinas talks about the caress, he's not just talking about caressing. He's talking about a way you make love, a way you engage with another person sexually. Before I get to Levinas, I forgot. Merleau-Ponty is the I relationship that I mentioned, right, in Buber, in the second lecture that you had to listen to, right? And then Levinas, of course, we are going now into the I-thou relationship that Buber mentioned, right? So the I-you, how to have an I-thou relationship sexually. Okay, so let's look at how Levinas talks about this way of making love, which he calls the caress, and let's see what we can learn from it. So I'm here on page 24, third paragraph, where it says the caress consists. Put your hand in the screen if you're with me. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read it, and then you're going to tell me what is he talking about. Okay. The caress, she's quoting Levinas here. Okay, the caress consists in seizing upon nothing, in soliciting what ceaselessly escapes its form toward a future never future enough, in soliciting what slips away as though it were not yet. It, and I wish to add, this is man's caress, it searches, it forages. It is not an intentionality of disclosure, but of search, and so forth. Okay, she's talking about a way of touching, which doesn't try to possess, which is exploring, which is searching. One word in the American language to summarize this starts with an F. It's not the word you're thinking of. Another one. What's that word? Anybody know? Starts with an F. F-O. F-O-R.
Fortune?
No, not fortune. It's a way of making love, right? It has to do with sex. It's a way of touching, which is exploratory, searching.
Foreplay?
Foreplay, very good, Williams. Levinas is talking about the importance of foreplay. What is foreplay? Foreplay is everything you do, right, before actually entering the woman, right? So you are taking care to kiss her, hold her, squeeze her, caress her, kiss her, right? All of the things. And by the way, it extends outside of the bedroom, inviting her to a nice dinner, being nice, opening the door, right? All of this is foreplay, right? Is the little attentions you do, and especially when you're touching, right? This is page 24, third paragraph, right? Everything, all the touching that you're doing before the actual, right, penetrating of the person, you are taking care to explore them, touch them, kiss them, and so forth. So that's foreplay. So now what Levinas is saying is that this is a crucial moment. This is the actual, right? You know, we talk about foreplay. He's saying, no, this is the main course, right? And Irigaray is going to agree with him. And I'm going to talk about in Irigaray why she's saying, if you skip this, it is a disaster. This is the main course. This is the most important. The time you take, right, to warm up the woman you're with, to express, right, through your touch, to explore her, to get to know her in that way before you actually enter her, right? So there are two main reasons for Irigaray why it's so important not to skip the foreplay. So I'm going to tell you right now. So A, here. A, there's an ethical reason. And B, there's a pleasurable reason. Okay, let's look into both. Okay, ethical reason. Very simple. And she's addressing the men in the class. So what she would tell us, right, to the men in the class, she would say, you skip the foreplay, the woman will inevitably, no matter how much you love her, she will feel like an it, right? So this is a woman you could have married, committed to. If you skip the foreplay, she's always going to feel a little bit used. She's always going to feel like she's just an object of pleasure, right? The whole time you take, right, as a man, to pleasure a woman before actually, right, engaging in the sexual act, the whole time you take to explore her, to touch her, to kiss her, to hold her, all these things, right, is the difference between her feeling like an it and her feeling like a thou, right? So if you want to honor the woman you're with, right, what Irigaray is saying is take your time. Take the time to explore her. Take the time to pleasure her before even thinking about orgasm, right? All of these ways that you can pleasure her and get to know her and explore her is a way to honor her dignity as a person, as a thou, right? So that's the first reason, right? Now, there's also a reason which has to do with a woman's pleasure, right? If you skip the foreplay, depends on the woman, but many women will find it difficult to open up sexually, and which will lead to more or less painful, uncomfortable sex, right? So actually a woman to open up to you, she actually needs the time, right? She actually needs this moment, right, of warming up, right, where she can really open up, right? And then the sex will eventually be more pleasurable, right? Now, I'm just noticing my battery is about to die, and I don't know why, because my computer is plugged in. So what's going on? Okay, we'll see. All right, we're almost done anyway. So, okay, so that's the first thing, right? That's what we're noticing is that and this can actually explain. And some of you will have relationships, right, where the woman is undergoing painful sex, right, with you. And immediately you're tempted to think, oh my God, we're not compatible. I'm not the one for them, right? Basically, all Irigaray is saying, maybe what is missing is a little bit of foreplay, right? In order to warm up the woman so that she can be truly open and receptive, right, when you get to her. So this is very important. And by the way, what we're learning here, right, is that there are regions in a woman which can really only be opened by a man's attentiveness and foreplay, right? And there has to be the time taken, right, to do this. Okay, now let's go into there's another quote I want you to focus on, going beyond this idea. So first of all, go to page 25, 1 to 3rd paragraph, the single line. Are you there? I'm trying to find you. Okay, yes. Oops, yes. Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay, yeah. Here she's saying the caress is an awakening to you, to me, to us, right? This is the emphasis on the I-you, right? She's saying through the caress, I'm awakening to you, I'm becoming a true I, and we're creating this relationship. So this is an allusion here to Buber's I-you. Now, here's the quote that I'm interested in. It's a very interesting quote on page 26. And since I'm getting nervous about my battery, I'm gonna unplug the camera. You'll still have me, but a bad image. I'm plugging the computer. Okay, hold on. Okay, so not so good, but I'm still here. Okay, page 26. Let's analyze 2nd paragraph. Am I plugged in now? Yes, okay. Let's analyze the 2nd paragraph, where it says the caress is a gesture word. How many of you are there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. Caress is a gesture word. Okay, so let's stop on what does it mean, a gesture? Gesture is a way of touching, okay? Touching. What's a word? Why do we use words? What's the point of words? Anybody know in general? What's a word for? When you use words, what are you trying to do?
Communication.
Okay.
Sorry, I should raise my hand.
Very good, right? Communication of something within you, you want to say it, you communicate. So gesture word is a way of touching that communicates, okay? Now, communicates what? What are you communicating when you're making love to someone? Normally, supposedly. What are you trying to, what's the point? What are you wanting to communicate when you are touching someone? That you love them, right? Malone is saying, right? So what she's saying, this is so crucial and important, especially in our culture, right? She's saying, let us not forget that sexuality, the whole sexual act, is a way of expressing love, right? It is the communication, the expression of love. And we have forgotten this, right? For us, sex is fun. It's a fun thing you do, fun activity, right? Or it's like a relaxing activity, right? We have sex like we go play handball, right? Or like we go to the beach to relax, right? So no, she's saying sex is much more than that. Sex is the communication of love towards another person. It's a language, physical language. It's a gesture word, right? So what she's saying is basically, if sex is a language to express love, make sure you have love to express, right? If you don't have any love to express, then don't say anything, right? Through your gestures. In other words, don't make love to someone that you don't love, really, right? Because then you will be simply playing, right? Or acting out love, but not really expressing it, right? So what she's talking about here is the importance, the crucial importance for advanced sex, right? If you want to have an advanced experience, if you want to get to a higher level of love making, make sure that there is also emotional maturity, that your feelings have reached a certain amount of maturity. If you want to have this kind of higher experience of sex, right? You cannot have a high experience of sex casually, right? At that point, it can be fun, it can be interesting, it can be, an experience, right? But to get to the level of gourmet sex, to get to the level of advanced sex, there has to be a certain amount of emotional maturity. Why? Because emotional maturity is what really allows the partners to open up. First of all, you're expressing something deep and profound. And second of all, you're creating an environment, right? When there is love, when there is commitment, you're creating an environment where both partners can very, very freely open up. And at that moment, when both of you are able to open up very freely, you have a next level type of sex, right? It's nothing compared to what you had when you were just messing around, right? So that's what she's saying. It's so important for there to be genuine love, for there to be actual good, amazing sex. You actually need there to be emotional maturity for both partners to feel like they can open up. And when they open up, that's when you really have high levels of pleasure, right? Pleasure is proportional to your capacity to open up. Just know this, right? If you can't open up, you probably don't experience much pleasure in your life. Opening up is really what makes the experience pleasurable. If you're not in a safe environment, right? And this is especially perhaps for the woman, even more than the man. If the woman doesn't feel like she's in a committed, loving relationship, she'll open up a little bit, but not as much as she could, right? The commitment and the safety of the love is what really helps the woman blossom and open up and experience maximum pleasure, and allowing her to give it maximum pleasure, right? This is why, by the way, I want to go and break a myth that I've heard a lot among students, right? You know how you say, "Oh, I can't commit to this person until I know we are sexually compatible." Have you heard this before? So I'm going to have sex with them to know if I can commit to them. How many of you have come across this brilliant argument? Anybody? Put your hand in. Okay. So this is very common, right? The person will say, "Well, I can't commit unless I know we are compatible sexually. So let's try, see, have sex and feel things out and see how we are. And then I'll decide," right? Now, here's how this is going to backfire. I'm going to tell you right now, right? You cannot test sexual compatibility before commitment, because it is commitment which allows the person to be fully themselves sexually, right? If you don't have the love, the person will never truly open up. Both the man and the woman, by the way, right? And so you'll be test driving that person, but you'll only get a stunted version of who they could be. So you can never really know who that person could be when they're really blossoming, right, sexually. Because if there's not this safe environment of love and commitment, people don't open up. And so you never know who they could be sexually unless there is first the space for love and commitment. And so it will backfire. You cannot test drive another human being. And so I want to go even deeper, right, and suggest that compatibility is not something that, clicks or not doesn't click. We're not machines. We're not puzzles, right? Compatibility is something that you build over time, right? And this is very true. Nobody is ever going to be fully compatible with you, sexually, spiritually, emotionally, when you meet them. Compatibility is something that you weave together, as you get to know each other, as you start to accept the other, as the other feels accepted, right? You begin to get closer and closer, and you're weaving this compatibility in time through love, commitment, and yeah, time, right? And so you can never really just test someone. The compatibility is not something that is there or is not there. Compatibility is something you create, right? Are you getting this? This is so important. Let me say it again. How many of you following me on this, right? Compatibility is not something that you have or you don't have. Oh, we don't have it. Oh, bummer. Okay, let's go our separate ways. No. Compatibility is something that you labor for. It's something that you create. It's something that you weave in time through love, through acceptance, right? Let me just say it right now so everybody gets this. No one in this world is compatible with you. Are you good? Are you hearing this? There doesn't exist one single human being who is fully compatible with you. Yeah, you'll have some areas where you're compatible, feeling good, but there will always be an essential thing that's missing. And then the temptation is, you're not the one. You're not my soulmate. You're not my prince charming. You're not my princess bride, right? We forget that doesn't exist, the person who is fully compatible on every level. There's always going to be something missing. And it's how we navigate around that really releases the love we're capable of, right? The way that you're capable to love someone that is missing something crucial is really the test of how deeply you can love and how mature your love is, right? So know this right now. Nobody will be fully compatible. Why? Because in order for you to truly learn to love, you have to be in touch with an imperfect being. Imagine if the person you're with is perfect on every level. Is that love? Or is that just selfishness? Oh, perfect. You love them because they're perfect for you, right? Are you, this is so important, right? Are you following this, right? If someone is perfect and everything is going well, are you loving another human being or are you loving yourself? Right? It is the imperfection, the lack in the other person, which really forces you to love more deeply, right? We saw this with Kierkegaard, right? And so sexually, right? If something is missing and you're not completely sure that you're compatible and you're not, right? Know this, two things. Compatibility is built over time. And number two, maybe it's not such a bad thing that something is missing because this is forcing you to go deeper and to love more deeply, right? So this is what we can learn, right? This is mature sex. This is advanced sexuality, right? The ability to honor the other person as a thou by engaging in foreplay, the emotional maturity that we bring to the table, knowing that compatibility is something that we create over time, loving what is missing, right? Loving someone even though you don't feel like completely fulfilled, but learning to love them in their lacks, right? Or perceived lacks, right? Because that is really what it means to love, right? This is all the components, right, of an emotional, of a mature sexual relationship, right? It's not easy, but it's much more interesting. So, let me close with this metaphor coming from the culinary, from food. So I'm French, so food is an important part of love for us in our culture. In fact, everybody knows how to cook in France. You have to be seductive, both men and women, right? We know. So I'm a vegan, right? But I went to Argentina, and I had to taste the steak, right? We know that Argentina is all about steak, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. So I ordered a steak, and I was like, and I take the first bite, and I was like carried off to heaven. Like it was the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. And I've eaten steak before, right, in the U.S. and everything. It's never such a great experience. But Argentina, the steak in Argentina, oh my God, forget it. Next level. I was transported on a cloud. This steak felt so light and fresh, and like I was eating vegetables, right? So it was amazing. So here's my question to you. What's the difference between Argentinian steak and American steak? Steak is not hard to cook. You slam it on the grill and you slam it on the other side, and that's it, right? So what's the difference? Why is the Argentinian steak so much better than the American steak? Let's see if some of you are gourmets. Let's see if you can help me here. Okay, we have some we have some answers already. Um, Islam, very good. Let's see who else who has their hand up. Let me get some of you first, and then I'll come back to you. Hot, and then Williams. Now we have some participation when it comes to
I was thinking, maybe they don't feed their animals with steroids.
yes, maybe. Very good. Williams, do you want to add?
They put time and time and love into it. Like they take their time and they make sure it's to their likings.
Okay, yes, they take the time maybe to season and they take the time to cook it, maybe, yes. And then Islam is talking about the quality of the meat, right? They're bred with more care, they eat better, they're less tortured than our animals, right? So it's not really, right? The cooking is very basic, it's the quality of the meat, right? So here's what I would suggest when it comes to love, right? It's not so much whether you have experience or whether you're skillful or whether you're like this amazing beautiful person, right? It's not even about beauty, it's not even about sexiness, or it's about how much love you have, right? If you have deep sincere love for someone, you can learn the skills, right? You will eventually become an amazing lover, right? So the idea is if you have the emotional component, right, this is what makes for great sex. The rest is you can learn, you can acquire, is secondary, right? What's important is what is the quality of the meat. In other words, what is the quality of your love? If your love is sincere, if your love is deep, you will be an amazing lover, right? In time. Sometimes immediately, but in time for sure, right? Because if you know how to love, you know how to listen, you know how to ask, you know how to learn, and you will develop, right, this amazing ability. On the other hand, even if you're an amazing, skillful lover, if you have no love, it's never going to get to the advanced level, right? It'll be nice, fun, pleasurable, but never profound, deep, right? And intimate, right? Okay. Any questions? This is your moment to ask any question you like about sex. You have one moment in your life where you can do that and clarify anything you need. You can ask now or you can ask after class. That's fine. But this is really the moment. This is our only sex education class. So if you have any questions on what I said or anything else, you can ask. While you're thinking, I'm going to write some in the chat some titles of, if you're a man and you want to learn the art of foreplay, the ancients have got you covered. There's a number of very ancient treatises on how to make love to a woman. So while you're thinking, I'll type them in the chat. So you have an ancient Muslim treatise from Islam called The Perfumed Garden, which is very beautiful, from the 16th century, I think, by, what was his name? Sheikh Nefwazi. Let me write this down. So if you want to learn the art of foreplay Muslim style, here you go. You have, of course, the Ananga. Oh my God, the spell check. Ananga. It's going to keep me from writing this. Okay, here we go. Ananga Ranga. This is a Hindu treatise by Kalyana Mala. If you know the Kama Sutra, this is the expanded version. It's much better than the Kama Sutra. More details, more explanation. And then you have contemporary, a woman who has written a lot of erotica, actually, a Naisnin. She has a beautiful essay called In Favor of the Sensitive Man. Sensitive Man, where she talks about how we are now in the era of a new woman, right? We know this with the progress of women's rights, feminism, right? We are creating a new woman, and this new woman needs a new man, right? And so she's talking about, right, how important it is for men to develop new aspects of themselves to match that woman, right? And so that's one essay. And then she also writes, also in the same context, the importance of foreplay and why and how can men develop that aspect. So she has a very, very beautiful essay that you can also read to go deeper, right, in this class in terms of developing your lovemaking capacities. Okay, I see there are no questions, so I will let you off the hook. I know this is a subject everybody gets very shy. So, okay, so this is it. This is our last class. I hope to see you again in another class. If you still want to talk, you can stay. I have time today. I have a lot of time today to talk. So whoever wants to share anything, ask questions, you can stay. The rest of you can go. And hopefully I will see you in another class. I look forward for your tests. So you can go. Bye, everybody. If you want to stay, you can stay. I'll see you soon. Hopefully.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Welcome.